homelessness for want to see what Kirk developed for that right away. So that might be something in your course. Yeah. Mayor, when you're ready, this was totally when we're ready.
And yeah, oh, she's there too. So, okay, let me get this fixed for us. Where are we? We are. Okay, we'll get to order at 1:30. I'm the chair, Todd Lands, and I'll let everyone introduce themselves around the table, starting to my left.
Mayor, Chair, David Kelly, City Manager.
I'm Joe Paula, City Council.
Kevin Thompson, Assistant City Manager.
Melanie Hall, Cloverdale Senior Multi-Purpose Center.
Jason Ferguson, Police Chief.
Joel Shulman, President.
Great, thank you. Our first item up, we're going to go through an update on homelessness activities. We will start with, let's see who's here. Jessica, we could make Jessica a panelist so she can speak first, and then Colleen as well. So might as well bring them both in. Yvonne, if you can hear us.
Yvonne's on mute.
Yeah, no, she's working on it. She can get the finger. The index finger. Correct that one.
Okay, so I can hear now. I have a gentleman outside my window mowing the lawn. So it's very noisy.
If you could bring Jessica and Colleen in so I can have them give us updates.
Absolutely.
Thank you so much. And Jessica as well.
On her way.
Hi, Jessica. How are you today?
Hi, everyone. I'm doing well, thank you.
Can you give us an update on the Alexander Valley Health?
I think that you guys meant to have Jody come in for that. I'm Jessica with Wallace House.
Jody.
No. Okay. We'll wait for Jody on that one. So then, well, I guess we'll start with Colleen. And you Jessica, both of you can speak now about everything going on. We'll pass this up.
And Colleen and Jessica, I received your attachments that you provided that our mayor and chair is handing out to the subcommittee members right now.
Hi, Colleen, can you hear us?
Yeah, hi. So can you hear me okay?
Yeah, we all have the handouts.
Great. So I guess the first bit of news is that we're tracking to get everybody placed at Cherry Creek in mid to late May. That's assuming that we get this issue with PG&E worked out. Thanks to Kevin Thompson and his staff. We think we've got that worked out. That was really the only major glitch. But right now it looks like we're shooting for about mid-May, possibly a little later. So that's what's going on with Cherry Creek. So we're happy about that. It's really coming out great. The second thing I wanted to update everyone on was in terms of the eligibility. That's been a point of stress for our agency recently. We found out in a call with the Housing Authority that we are going to be required to be chronically homeless, 100% homeless dedicated. That was not what we expected. We filled out one of the attachments you have there is an application checklist. When we applied for the different funding sources, we strategically and intentionally did not apply as homeless dedicated. That was so as to allow us to have the greatest amount of flexibility. As we had indicated in city council meetings, we wanted to make sure that we could provide more inclusionary housing and have a mixed population, which is best practices. Recognizing that 100% homeless dedicated would have required intensive case care management challenges that we would have preferred to not experience other than just possibly in a limited way. But nonetheless, we're going to make the best of it. We've got a plan. We're going to be able to work it out. In terms of concerns from the community, everyone will be required to pass a criminal background check. And the majority of the units are set up for families. So that should minimize some of the bigger stressors around individuals who might otherwise, be just too much for us to handle. So we're optimistic, and we're going to do the best we can. And we're also going to leverage other funding sources for case management so as to do some specialized services for people that might have some more significant challenges. So that's what we're doing there. And then lastly, something came up recently about people wanting to return to Cherry Creek who might have been displaced during the original, when we first started the development. One of the things that happened, because we knew that it was going to take more than a year to complete the project, we opted to go for permanent relocation. And what that meant was that everyone would get 42 months of relocation benefits. So that exhibit that you have there shows the amount of benefits that we paid. 42 months. The total is roughly around a little under $300,000 that our company, that our agency has paid out to people to permanently relocate. Most everyone took advantage of the money and went to places with a lower cost of income. So for example, they went to Texas, Florida, Oregon, Humboldt, and places such as that. We only have one individual who's indicated they wanted to come back. And he also received 42 months of relocation benefits. So, and he's permanently housed. So he would not be eligible. And and it's important just to mention, our agency's focus is to try and get people to be more independent. We don't want to create dependency where it's an unhealthy thing to do. And in this particular case with this individual, he's really needing to launch. And so we're trying to encourage that as opposed to enabling some unhealthy behaviors. But otherwise, that process has taken place and everyone's gotten settled and they're all thrilled because they got these huge windfalls, 39, some cases, $40,000. So that's, I think that's pretty much the update. Jessica, in case you can think of anything else I'm missing.
No, I think that's it.
Yeah, I guess the last point I wanted to make, I don't know if Margaret's on the call or Jim from Reach for Home or Angela, or I know Mayor Todd's on the call. I just wanted to say how awesome I think it is that you guys all collaborated, coming from pretty, opposite sides of the spectrum in terms of your views on things, but ultimately having the same goal that you wanted to try and get people housed and get them off the river and, address all the safety issues. I just want to applaud you guys for coming together and working on that and coming up with a count. And I won't jump into that because that really isn't in my, my area of expertise right now. I didn't participate, but I just wanted to say thank you. And that's it for me.
Thank you, Colleen. I'm going to go around the table and see if anyone has questions for you.
Yeah, no questions, but thank you for that good report. Thank you for all your hard work on this. Really appreciate it.
Yeah, thanks, Colleen. Appreciate it. I'm glad I could help with the fees and anything. I didn't do very much, but glad to hear it's being resolved. False. Yeah.
I'm just very excited to hear about this in our community. It does sound like it's going to be quite a project to keep up on. But it's nice to see that you have Jessica there to help. I know she's a very, very capable person. And thank you, Colleen, for all you've done.
I certainly echo that. Thanks for everything you're doing. This is a process, and it's one step at a time. So this is great to hear. So thank you.
I thank you guys. I really appreciate the support.
So I haven't really been involved, so I just have a couple questions, but thank you for your help and doing all this. But I was just curious, so this place is turned into all 100% homeless and not low income? Is that what I understood? And are the homeless coming from Cloverdale, or are they coming from throughout the county, or are they the people that are like living on the river from Cloverdale? Is that what's going there? Or is it from the county, and then what happens to the people that wanted to do the low income? Or are we building other places for them? And is it veterans, or is it just homeless? Is it those type of questions I guess I have?
Sure. Yeah, when we presented at City Council, our intention all along was to be, like I said, more inclusionary and have a mixed population, which is best practices. All of our applications were for affordable, with the one exception for the project-based vouchers, which indicated special needs. We did not check the homeless box, if you'll notice by the exhibit. That was intentional. That was strategic, again, so that we could include people, for instance, that were precariously housed, and people that just really fall into the category of needing the housing for economic reasons. Unfortunately, after I don't say maybe a couple months ago, we got a call from the Housing Authority, and it was prompted by a phone call that they were complaining about us being inclusionary housing. And so I think what happened at that point is the Housing Authority realized that they didn't restrict us to 100% homeless, which was probably their intention all along. But they didn't really realize it, I don't believe, until the last couple of months. So initially they said, okay, well, no, you have to be literally homeless. And then they changed it, they ratcheted it down again to say chronically homeless. So, and the distinction is that we could have taken someone out of treatment if they were literally homeless the minute that they sleep in a car for one night or come to the Wallace house. They didn't have to be homeless for over a year or more than 4 times in 3 years. And that's a huge distinction, because along with the chronic homeless situation, you end up with people who really, really are high utilizers of emergency response, police, just all of the resources that entails. But we will need to go through the Housing Authority wait list through coordinated entry. It will be countywide. We cannot make a geographic, we can't have a geographic preference. HUD won't allow it. And so that's unfortunately where we've ended up. So no, unfortunately, so we won't be able to specify Cloverdale or affordable the way we had designed it to be originally.
So you, like, if there's a 3-bedroom, so most homeless people are not like families, most of them, I don't know percentages, but I assume that most of them are single. So what happens to those units? That's not good for a family, or?
So
Family chronic or the worst of the worst. It doesn't seem like should be in these brand new 3-bedroom places, in my opinion. But I don't know why they just didn't fix it up. I mean, so that's what I don't understand.
Well, I think people might be surprised, because most of our clients have been at Cherry Creek were chronically homeless, and we had problems, but for the most part, the majority were really grateful and respectful. And in this case, we're going to have families. So in addition to the fact that we won't have just individuals, we designed it so that we would have more capacity for families. And along with that, you generally have leverage in terms of child protective services, for example. If somebody gets really off the rails, you can say, look, do you want to lose your kids back into the system again? And that usually is enough to kind of get them back on track. We have no problem, as I've mentioned in previous meetings, with calling the police. If we see illegal activities, we're not going to put up with it. And we also have a full-time or a on-site property management company with a strong back office, and only 9 of the units are for are 1-bedrooms, which means we could have 2 people in those units, but that would be the only area where it would they would be approved for a 1-bedroom, would be an individual or a couple. So the vast majority will be for families, and our experience has been that the families have been much lower maintenance than some of the chronically homeless individuals.
Guidelines as far as alcohol and drugs and things like that, just their housing government funding. I mean, because the reason I'm asking this is because I happen to have a family member that's homeless. And so I've been through this for like 15 years, and they live at the Palms in Santa Rosa. And I've got some pictures of what their place looks like on an ongoing basis, and I'm gonna pass these around. This is like a family member of mine. So I have a lot of experience in this. I go there 3 times a week, and I can see that this person gets $1,000 a month to go buy alcohol and sit there and get drunk and trash the place. And now I have somebody come in there 3 days a week and clean in the place, but it's very hard. I mean, unless you have, this is supposed to be set up for low income, and now you're changing the whole guidelines of these places. I mean, it's unlivable. There is cockroaches and maggots and lice, and the lice are so bad that hospice wouldn't even come in. And this is what they look like. I'm going. So, I mean, they're going from shopping carts to that. They don't know. I mean, most of the people that I'm assuming are going to live there, or except for maybe the families, they don't know how to take care of themselves. They need somebody there. You don't just give them a 1-bedroom to let them go do their, the government gives them money to go get the drugs, get the alcohol, and then you sit them in a place. So, I don't know. I just have a real problem with how it's played out.
I think that's a really good question. Is there going to be a manager on the premises, Colleen?
Yes, so we're going to have an on-site property management company, and we will enforce the rules. That we are, as we have in the past, the way we run our programs is we don't put up with a lot of nonsense. And
you're there now, and I know you personally, so I really respect you. But what happens when you leave down the road? Right now, he gets in-home services. I mean, 3 times a week they go there, they drink with him, he signs off on them, gives them $20, they make their money. Bottom line, Catholic Charities are involved, they don't do crap. Reach for Home is involved. This is at the Palms in Santa Rosa. They told him if they want to get him off the street, which he lived on for 10 years, that it's okay now that you can go ahead and drink in there, because before he wouldn't go in because he couldn't drink. Now they've changed the rules where it's housing first, deal with the problem later, but they're not dealing with the problem. They're just doing the housing. So they give him $1,000 to go buy weed, limit has $50 every other day so he can go buy booze and cigarettes. But before that, if they don't have me, then they blow their money. They're back on the street getting money. So I'm just saying there is all kinds of agencies involved in that one. You can go visit it, and you guys should be taking tours of these places because they're not handled properly.
right. Yeah, I think that sounds like a serious property management issue. And in our case, we're going to, kind of play good cop, bad cop, and the property management company will be the bad cop. And in that case, we'd say, look, you're going to lose your housing and your behaviors, because it's not conducive to quiet and peaceful enjoyment for the other clients. You're going to be evicted, and we are not going to get in the way. We are not going to stand in the way of the property management company. And I think that's what's missing at the Palms, from what I understand. And I'm not wanting to criticize them because it's a very, very difficult challenge down there. But I think the missing component in that particular property is the lack of property management enforcement.
Just a follow-up question. You mentioned earlier that each client will have a background. Can you just go into a little detail what that becomes?
Sure. So the Housing Authority screens them with a Department of Justice background check. So what that means is anyone who has previous convictions, especially as they relate to violence or the Violence Against Women Act, if there's any domestic violence or any charges of that sort, even misdemeanors in many cases, drug manufacturing, if they have a pattern of criminality, those kinds of things are going to disqualify them.
Thank you.
So Colleen, has the county said that they will try to get families in there, or give me any type of anything that says that they will fill these with families versus singles and 3-bedroom units and stuff?
Well, no, you can't have shared housing with tax credit property. So, and the Housing Authority wouldn't allow it anyway. If you have a HUD voucher and you're approved for a 3-bedroom unit, you have to have multiple family members. You know, you can't just have a roommate situation generally. I mean, they are making some exceptions because the emergency housing vouchers are so hard to, you know, they're having such a difficult time, but that's a rare exception in our case. Our tenant selection plan would fit families in family units, not shared housing.
Just a follow-up question on the property manager. Is there anything in the agreement that will allow them to make periodic inspections of inside each of the units to make sure
Yes.
it's maintained appropriately and not being used inappropriately and not being destroyed, if you will?
Yeah, absolutely. Well, in addition to the property management company, because we have project-based vouchers, HUD does an annual inspection. So at the very least, we have an annual, but in between those times, if we recognize that we've got someone with some hygiene or cleanliness issues, or they're hoarders or whatever, we're going to be going in much more frequently. That will be a part of our case management and supportive services that we provide. We're not going to let things get out of control. And if we go in and see that there's an issue, we notify them. They've got to get back on track. And if they don't, then they're going to be issued with an eviction notice.
Did you hear that, Colleen?
What's that?
That would be in their contract when they sign for the vouchers and the housing.
Yeah, that's in the contract, and it would be in the lease agreement. So we would have a HAP contract as well as a lease agreement.
So let's say they're not following the guidelines, they do it like this, like I've seen many of the places down at the Palms. What happens when you try to evict them? Because I don't know if you'll be able to at that point because they won't have a place to go. So it's very hard to follow through the eviction. Like so they're gonna back on the street on the homeless in Cloverdale?
Well, so the property is no different really in that respect because it's covered under typical landlord tenant laws. There are no additional restrictions on evictions other than standard California landlord tenant laws. And oftentimes people are even more compliant because they don't want to lose their voucher because they only have to pay 30% of their rent for income. So if they end up becoming homeless, we would certainly help them try and find some sort of shelter or alternative. But we're not going to be held hostage as an agency with high maintenance clients who don't follow the rules because we fear that they are going to return to homelessness. That's not going to be our responsibility. That would be the responsibility of the continuum of care. We would connect with them. We would say, look, you've got someone who's just can't, they weren't ready and they aren't able to maintain stable housing. We've tried, we've given them as much in the way of supportive services and case management assistance as we can. They aren't complying with the rules. They violated their lease agreement. They're not a good fit. So, let's get them down to Sam Jones Hall, or maybe you guys have some higher level of supportive services, because they need more help. They need much more help. Maybe that would be some sort of a group home.
May I ask one more question, Colleen?
Yeah.
I'm not sure if you answered this already, but are the people that will be screened for moving in here, are they coming from mainly Cloverdale, or is it all of Sonoma County? Where will they be coming? Where will you be servicing from?
They will come from all over Sonoma County because of the change that occurred when we were required to go through coordinated entry. Well, we always knew we were going to go through coordinated entry, but we thought we were under the impression that we had a geographic preference for Cloverdale, but we don't.
So, Colleen, I have a question for you. It doesn't sound like we truly have the population in Cloverdale homeless to they're going to benefit from this. And it's due to the voucher system. I know you and I have talked about it before, but can you talk talk more about that and why we have to use that voucher system, because I personally would like to look for a different way to help Cloverdale residents first, or at least have a portion of this as it was, sold to the community as something that's going to benefit Cloverdale. And right now, I'm having a hard time seeing it affecting anyone in Cloverdale at this point.
Well, so if, a couple of people have suggested, well, just don't take the vouchers. It's just that simple. Well, it's not just that simple. The voucher income pays for the supportive services. So without the voucher income, you essentially just have a basic affordable housing project. Now, if that's, and that's not something that we're willing to do. We want to have the ability to have supportive services on site. And in terms of the typical chronically homeless that are here in town, the vast majority of them, if not all of them, would not qualify because they're criminal backgrounds. So in those instances, we've talked to Margaret from Reach for Home. There may be a place for at least one or two of them over at the L&M. And the others, we believe in many instances, are candidates for conservatorship. And so hopefully with the new laws that are coming in that are loosening up those restrictions, that will ultimately help the chronically homeless who are in need of that type of help.
The next question would be a little bit different, and it's just something that's coming into my head right now, Colleen, is some of your nonprofits like Reach for Home and Margaret and yourself, you always have emergency housing and houses around our town that we can house people in. Is that an option to use different funding than these vouchers to use these units as that type of housing for some of these people? Does that make sense?
Yeah, I mean, you could, I think what you're suggesting is a bit of like a group home. So if you had, say, a Buckaloo or a community support network, if they had the, huh?
You have a couple houses here in town, and
Right.
and they're always full, and there's always a wait list. Is it possible to use, half these units for something along those lines? And I'm just asking because like I said, it just came to my head this way. So like you're always trying to buy more homes. Why don't we use these for that, since they're already purchased through the city?
Well, they weren't purchased through the city. Those houses were purchased with neighborhood stabilization program funding from the federal government during the Obama era. And those are strictly low income. They're not dedicated for any special population. And we have placed families in there that don't have a lot of case management needs, because we don't have the additional case management resources. If we were to put people in there that, say coming off the river, that's a whole different deal, and it puts a whole different level of pressure on the neighbors. Essentially anybody could could buy a house in Cloverdale and start a Wallace house. I mean, we didn't need any special permission. That was just something that the Episcopal Diocese did, and they started the Wallace House. And, for example, I mean, say for instance, if the clinic decided they wanted to get some funding, they could buy a house in the neighborhood and put chronically homeless people in there and provide them with case management support. And they could partnership with, say a Buckaloo or a community support network. Now that's a realistic option. But, the other issue I have with doing something like that is because homeless service providers are being expected to pick up the slack for behavioral health. Behavioral health needs to use Measure O money and the other funding available to get, if say they were to do that. That's something that behavioral health needs to do. Homeless service providers aren't qualified. We're not mental health practitioners. We're not social workers. We don't have that type of experience necessary to handle people with psychoses. So, it sounds like it might be a good idea, but in practicality, you need group homes with on-site mental health care practitioners that are specialized in medication management, Narcan delivery if someone overdoses, keeping people from, there are all sorts of safety and liability issues and ethical issues that you have to really consider before you you go down that path.
But isn't that the path that this place is going down? I'm confused. It seems like you're saying it's the chronically ill, but then you're saying you don't have the support services for that, like you're just explaining. So that's.
Well, we're not going to be, the chronically homeless that we're going to be dealing with will not fall under the category of severe mental illness. So that would be something that we would not be capable of handling. That's just not, no, we've tried that in the past. We had one gentleman who had schizophrenia. He started fires. We had another young man who walked out in front of a truck trying to commit suicide. We had another gentleman who had schizophrenia who kept disappearing on us. We get him settled. He disappeared and he'd end up in Oregon. Another time in San Francisco, we'd get calls from Marin County CHP that he was down there on the side of the road. I mean, just, no, we don't, no, that's not, we've tried it. It didn't work. We're not qualified.
I was just sorry, but so you're going to be able to have an application process and reject the ones that are like homeless, like schizophrenia and things like that. So you're going to be able to be just like a landlord where you can go, what's the best tenant?
I can't quite make out. What'd you say, Joan? I can't quite hear you.
I was just wondering, because the application project, the application process, so you're going to be able to choose which tenant you want. I mean, you have that, you're going to have the right to do that so that you're not taking the people that need more help, like a group home, or because you're getting all this funding, you're going to have to accept people that maybe aren't the best, person for that place.
No, I think the Community Development Commission is sensitive to the fact that they don't want to place people in HUD housing who have severe mental illness, that's the more appropriate placement for that particular client is in a group home or in some type of assisted living facility. So, we've got it, we've worked with coordinated entry system in the past when Catholic Charities, well, they still are managing it. And they know, they say, oh, well, so you guys really do a great job with people who are clean and sober, for example. And they'll say, oh, well, we've got folks that score high on the vulnerability index survey and they got sober and they're willing to go to Cloverdale because not everybody's going to be willing to come to Cloverdale. And that would be a good placement. And so we would accept that referral. They go through a background check. The property management company does the additional screening, and that's the way it works. If they have obvious psychoses, then we would engage with behavioral health and work with someone like Tom Bieri at Community Support Network or someone at Buckaloo and say, hey, have you guys got a place? Because this referral is probably best suited for on-site, more supervision. So that's the way we would handle things. That's the way we've done it in the past.
Just so you all know, Jody Kane has joined as a panelist.
Thank you, Yvonne.
Uh-huh.
So Colleen, the last question I have for you at this point. Originally, we had talked about, when people come out of treatment, trying to catch them when they're couch surfing before they get worse again with whatever their addiction was or issue was that got them into that point. And we're trying to catch people to keep them from becoming chronically homeless. Is there any funding sources that we could really look into as a city to do, instead of going to only the, I'm sorry to say it, the bottom of the barrel once people hit their bottom, that we catch them at the bottom versus catching them before they have to fall? Is there any funding source that we have to try to stop that process and get some of those people housed here as well?
Right. So, I believe that there is definitely a need for sober housing throughout Sonoma County, throughout the country, but very much so. I don't know that we have much more than maybe, I don't know that we have any other sober living in Cloverdale that is official sober living other than possibly what we've done at the Wallace House. So there's a huge need. There would be there's going to be funding available coming down the pipeline now because of Gavin Newsom's $12 billion that's going to be dedicated to, a lot of it is going to be to treatment beds. And as a result, when they get out of treatment, they're going to need the sober living environment. So there is a huge push right now to do that. And we would always be looking for ways to try and find additional funding to expand capability along those lines, because that's our core. That's really what we do.
I just have a quick comment. There used to be a funding mechanism all cities and counties had when we had redevelopment. Portion of that money went into for low to moderate income housing, and it had to be used for that purpose. But when they short-sighted decision to cut that program totally, took away all funding resources, not just Cloverdale, throughout the state. And now it's a big red flag and everybody's backpedaling. And, it's kind of like, we got an emergency, we need money, they take it. And then if the problem just grows to, and now we're in a reactive, how do we fix it? And there's no funding to do that. So I just had to say that because our former governor, Jerry Brown, when the state, when we were in the recession, decided that was the best way to balance the state budget by eliminating redevelopment, which took about 30% of that money annually that went right into this fund that we're talking about to handle these issues. And we were able to really put a dent in it, even in our little town of Cloverdale at that time. But it's been gone for about 10 years now, and there's just no money, unfortunately. So it's always looking. So I just wanted to make that comment because it's unfortunate.
That's a good point. I think the bigger issue coming in front of us in the next, certainly the next year, as all this funding, well, it's already happened, as evidenced by the 280 or 90 emergency housing vouchers that people aren't able to use because there's no housing inventory. So you've got people that receive the chronically homeless people that receive the emergency housing vouchers and can't find an apartment. I think we're going to experience the same thing when all this money starts coming into the system, because yeah, it's great to have a lot of funding for treatment beds, but where are the treatment beds? So catching up with the funding is going to be an interesting challenge for all the communities. And I'm looking forward to it. I'm hopeful that way we will be able to not have housing first, but because really I call housing first, housing last. Joe, you mentioned that you wait until people, or a couple of you mentioned you wait until people get so bad that they've got psychoses from having been on drugs and not dealing with the mental illness. I see this as a way for us to really get additional housing stock and treatment beds and sober living, but it's going to take some time. And but I'm hopeful.
Thank you, Mayor. I just wanted to know, we did have some questions from Angela Cordova. Some of those have been answered.
Yeah, I was reading through.
Anything you wanted to touch on?
Yeah, let me go through them one more time. Colleen, I got some questions. They were emailed in because she was unable to be on the meeting. The only one I saw that was not answered, and I don't know if it's yours to answer, Colleen, and that's why I wasn't bringing it up, is are the Reach for Home houses in Cloverdale full, and are they Cloverdale homeless first?
So if Margaret's on here, I don't think anybody else from Reach for Home is on, but I communicate with Margaret almost on a daily, pretty routinely. I think they had one vacancy, but as far as I know, they are full. And yeah, they, I think, are in the process of placing somebody in that one vacancy, but I can't be sure about that.
And one other question that was asked that I haven't heard is, where did we go? When can people apply and what is the application process?
So for anyone who believes they might be chronically homeless more than 1 year or more than 4 times in the past 3 years, they would apply through coordinated entry. And the number is 866-542-5480. It's 866-542-5480. Catholic Charities is still managing coordinated entry. So anybody that fits into that category should be referred, then they will be screened with a vulnerability index survey known as a VI SPDAT. They are picking people off the top of the list. So if you score the highest, you're going to be selected first. But again, those folks may or may not be able to pass a background check. So we'll be working through the list. We're going to get 120 referrals. We're going to start culling through the list, and then we'll get another batch and another batch. And the good news is we are at functional zero for chronically homeless families in Cloverdale and Northern Sonoma County. So, I mean, that's the good news. But anybody who's thinks they might be eligible should go through coordinated entry.
Thank you, Colleen. Any other questions in the room?
Mayor, if I can, Mayor Chair, just a note, Colleen, you mentioned that, you know, you're going to begin candidate selection in mid-May. You know, given the city was, you know, a partner in the project, both funding, but also in the design and development, I think it'd be really wonderful if we could plan an open house, preferably before we get tenants in there. You know, that way we could kind of do a tour and walk through. So if it's okay with you, I'll coordinate and we'll work on setting a date and time for that. And maybe that's something you can coordinate with your contractors, you know, when they think would be ready, and when would be the appropriate timing to host a tour and open house, at least for our council. But I also think it would be beneficial, at least for members of our community, to see a project. I know it's come together, it's looking nice, but it'd be great to be able to, you know, before you get tenants in there, to actually take a look and you know, be able to walk through the units and see what the fruits of all of our work over the last 10 years has been.
Yeah, absolutely. No, that we're looking forward to that.
Jody has her hand up.
Jody, go ahead.
Hi there. Sorry I was late. I wanted to just point out that coordinated entry will be transferring out of Catholic Charities. They're in the process of doing that now, and it'll be going through Home First. So I don't know if the number will be changing, but as of now, that's the correct number, but it's transferring from Catholic Charities to Home First.
There's also a hand up from Nina Hashett in the public.
Please bring her on in.
Okay. Nina.
So I thank you. I'm sorry that I was late. I somehow got booted off of Zoom and it took me a while to get back on. So I wanted to offer Colleen and the city the services of the chamber to promote the ribbon cutting and or open house, whatever you want to call it. But looking forward to that. We've seen that project just blossom.
Yeah, thank you, Nina.
Great. Jody, can you give us an update on your activities?
As far as the emergency housing vouchers, or can you be more
whatever you've been working on through ABH since our last meeting?
Yeah, been currently just working with a handful of patients. Colleen has actually hit it on the nose. These influx of vouchers that came through, although they're great, they are simply a piece of paper until, you know, my patients are housed. And that is continuing to be a barrier, just actually physically putting them in a house. So I agree with that. And I have been able to place successfully one person that I received a voucher for. And I'm in the process of still trying to obtain a voucher on another person who was approved. But I'm continuing to work with the system and kind of navigate through the changes of coordinated entry. And it's, you know, housing is changing day to day and the availability. So it's a matter of just staying on top of those open wait lists. I am working with Dom and a couple other folks from the Catholic Charities, trying to work together with the people who are in our location to find them housing. There's been a few openings, so it continues to be a real struggle, to be perfectly honest. So it's just something I'm always on. But I am looking forward to this project in Cloverdale and the chronically homeless shelter, I think, or housing. I think that that's going to be a plus, and hopefully we have patients that can, you know, get their lives, you know, better and have better health outcomes. So that's my work.
Jody, without being specific,
Yeah.
we talked about, you know, at the point in time, which is coming up on our agenda, the functional zero, but that doesn't count people that are couch surfing or being, you know,
Correct.
housed other ways in our town. Do you have any idea how many of your patients are couch surfing? I'll just call it that, so that, you know, it's kind of a wide open.
Currently, I mean, just this week, too, I'm working with a family that is couch surfing. And yeah, I have a family who is couch surfing. I have 1, 2, 3, 4. Yeah, there's quite a number of folks who are couch surfing or sleeping in their car, sleeping on people's property. You know, it's unfortunate, but homeless doesn't simply mean people on the street. You know, and I want to make sure I say that not everyone who I work with who is homeless are, you know, raging drug addicts. They're not. So, you know, we tend to, or we're quick to stereotype, but not everybody who's homeless is choosing to be and or drug addicts. So it's important to maintain, you know, your objective mind and openness to the situations, and make sure that you treat each case individually and not get caught up in the stigma of the labels and titles that we're affixing. So I just try to work with that. But we have quite a bit couch surfing.
Received an email from City Hall saying that homeless patients went down in 2021. We reported 72 homeless. So of their patients, it sounds like there's 72. I don't know where it may not be you're living in this exact area, but of their patients. So, any questions from the Yeah.
Nina Hatchett has her hand again.
Bringing in Beth. Go ahead, Nina, whenever you're ready.
Actually, I thought I lowered it.
Oh, sorry.
Apologize.
No problem.
I think
I'll
I
put it
did
down.
it. Sorry about that. I was gonna let you know that, but
Okay, thanks.
thank you.
Elaine, please. Go ahead.
Hello?
Elaine, go ahead.
Yeah, hi. So I got a message from Margaret. She got hung up. So she just expressed her regrets, but she wasn't able to get on the meeting. But I did want to mention, I don't think anybody brought up the topic, and because she wasn't on the call, about the homeless count. Todd, I didn't know if you wanted it, or were you going to talk about that, or in terms of the number?
Yeah, we can talk about it. We can just skip to it now because there's Margaret's not here, so we can just move on to that if you don't mind. Go ahead, Colleen, if you want to speak. Go ahead.
So like I said earlier, I'm just so happy that everybody got together and worked on a number that everybody was able to agree upon, or at least it seemed that way. And I think the number was under 30, which is consistent. And that would be inside the city limits, outside, you know, in the unincorporated area. That's consistent with the last time that Wallace House performed the count. So it seems like it's been somewhat static in terms of the number. So that is, it's great to hear that number hasn't increased significantly, because I think it's not so overwhelming. And from a case management perspective, we can then assess properly and then get them the help that they need, which is most likely going to be from behavioral health. So I think if we can say, okay, come on, get up here, behavioral health, with your Measure O money. We've got these, you know, less than 30 people. So now where are you going to put them? And what are you going to do to help us? And that's my goal, is to try and continue to advocate for getting behavioral health up here to help the less than 30 people that we have who are chronically homeless and really need behavioral health support.
You're exactly right, Colleen. When we did the count, it was a little bit different rules this time due to COVID. So it was one group went around to everywhere. But what was nice is we knew almost every single person by a first name basis in our area. We're very familiar. Reach for Home is very familiar, and who they didn't know, I knew, and who I didn't know, they knew. And so it worked out pretty well. There was only 3 people that we did not know, and we think they were your Thousand Trails guests that have to be there for a certain amount of time and be moved out. And they were going to go back and make contact with them later. Later in that morning, I never heard what happened. So they were counted in the count. There was 3 vehicles, we counted 3 people. However, that count could fluctuate down 3, which would have got us to a 24 number, or upwards, into around 30, but it was still below 30. And they're all are very well known, very familiar. And, we know they have most of them have some issue that we're familiar with and are dealing with, whether it's behavioral health or substance or alcohol, or some of them, they're just making that choice for themselves. So out of those 24, there aren't many that will be affected by any of the housing that you're doing, Colleen, or any of the other, like the tribal housing they're talking about right now. That would affect a couple that we know of for sure. So that's, it takes a couple out of that number, but not very many.
Right. Hey, Todd, how many were actually in city limits?
Give me a second. Probably around 6, Colleen.
Okay, that sounds about right. And that's consistent again with what we had experienced before. And they were generally around the over by the cemetery. So they actually fell over into that side of the jurisdiction.
Cemetery. There was a couple that they were walking through town at the time. They sleep in the plaza or in the city park and places like that.
Mm-hmm.
So they're the normal ones that you see walking around. They were just out and about, so they got counted for being in town. But we know that they have family in town, live in town somewhere, crash at other people's houses or sleep in the plaza for the most part.
Right.
It looks like Jody has her hand up.
Yeah, I wanted to we kind of circle back super quick to the behavioral health need up in our area. Just kind of want to throw out that on effective May 1st, Medi-Cal is offering additional benefits, full scope benefits that are going to be provided to all individuals that are 50 years or older. And that's regardless of immigration status, and those benefits do include behavioral health. So that's kind of a plus. So hopefully that helps open up some access to some of our folks who need it. And that's without any barriers with legal status, or there's no restrictions on that. So.
Thank you, Judy.
Yeah.
Anyone else? All right, well, that covers the point in time. Let's circle back to Chief Ferguson.
Thank you. I looked at the notes from last time, so hopefully some of those things were taken care of in my absence. But I want to just talk about one individual that showed up back in our county, because I noticed they weren't addressed last time. And I'm not sure if they were brought back to our community since the meeting, but I think we're all familiar with her. And for those of you that are not aware, I think, Joe, you're kind of new to this process that we broke off with Margaret and I think Colleen. And we're really trying to focus one at a time on our most critical needs folks here in town. And this individual, I thought we had not been placed for, I was hoping it would be long-term and sustainable, but unfortunately in the back of the community. So it kind of goes to the point that Colleen was talking about who can qualify. Clearly this person won't because of a potential criminal history issue, but also most likely because it's a chronic illness rather than chronic homelessness. And that creates a problem for us as to those behavioral health issues that we need and those behavioral health services that, in my opinion, aren't necessarily really coming to fruition for some of these folks in helping us. This is clearly an individual that needs it, and why they continue to end up on our street, I have no idea. So I really don't have the answers on out of them. I'm hoping somebody can help with this, because there's really no placement that I can see for this individual. So it's going to be a constant process. With that being said, I typically give our statistics since February, last meeting, we've had 21 homeless related calls citywide, 45 different contacts in the plaza. And I want to just clarify, since we've been enforcing the curfew in the plaza, we've had a much better success. The contacts that I say, the 45, are our own patrols going out there, checking on people, seeing what's going on. And some are calls too, but the majority are ours doing patrols and checking those areas out. And I know that we've been successful in that. Yes, you will see them during the day, because I cannot control them in the plaza, sitting, lying, or standing based on law. But if they are committing an offense, I've made it clear to the staff, feel free to remove them, because they do have to adhere to the rules. And if they're not, as far as I'm concerned, that gives us enough to have them leave. Now, not leave permanently, but at least get out of there for the day if they're not going to follow the rules. Because as we know, citing them for smoking and things like that are really kind of, I won't say dead ends, but they're really not helping us in the cause, because they're not arrestable offenses. These folks aren't going to pay the fines. And so that becomes where are we going with it from there. So we're trying to do our best, as well as the parks. We're forcing the curfews on that too. So if anybody is seeing folks camping in the parks, let us know, because we're adhering to the curfews. And we are able to enforce that. We continue to do the early morning patrols. We did have it stopped for a little bit because of the Omicron virus, but we're back at it. And my report from my CSO is she's not seeing near as many individuals, and it was mostly the same ones lying in front of businesses in the mornings. Those aren't occurring at the rate that they used to be, and I'm hopeful that that's because they're being contacted all the time when they are there and asked to move on. We'll continue to do that. But other than that, and the other individual that I think we're all familiar with, the young individual's got some serious mental health issues as well. I have not seen him in a week or so, so I'm not 100% sure if he's been given services, have been given assistance. I'm hoping so. But if anybody has an update, maybe you know what I'm talking about. If not, we're going to have to talk to you offline, and we can find out if this individual is getting services that I'm not aware of. But I sure love to know. Other than that, that's the end of my report.
Chief, this last week, Cloverdale Connect published an article on the business outreach program, and maybe just for everybody here at our community advisor, just touch on the program that you work on with our chamber director.
Yeah, so it's Business Watch, very similar to Neighborhood Watch. It's really designed about the businesses in the business district. I know myself and Lieutenant Parker on 2 occasions have held Business Watch meetings. And what we do is we kind of address what are the problems the business community is facing. We educate them on what laws are available, how they need to go about doing complaints, citizens arrests, and taking further action to maintain the security of their business. We're more than happy. We'll probably be doing one of those again here in the near future. And we also kind of address what laws hamper our ability to do things that I think business folks really want to see us do. So we kind of explain some of the challenges we have in this, but we're always open to any business that wants to have a meeting for their business. We'll do a business watch again. I have no problem doing that. I'm pretty sure Nina's already coordinating with Lieutenant Parker to set something like that up again. But there's quite a bit we can do for our business district, and just kind of educating them is first and foremost.
Just real quick, the complaint that I had heard, and I think we spoke briefly about this, was with the Burger Park and City Park with the dugouts, potentially sleeping in the dugouts and doing things that are less than sanitary within the dugouts, and when the kids go there, and they're confronted with that. So I just want wanted to just get reassurance that the officers are making periodic checks after the park closes to make sure that the dugouts are not being used for those purposes.
Certainly, and like I said, we'll continue to put the extra enforcement out there on parks to enforce curfew laws.
It's really hard to see, and it's an ideal spot to spend the night, but it's the things they're doing during the night that's making the road bad. Thank you.
I only have one complaint, and I think it was 20 years ago. There we go. It was a homeless person who likes to use planters for suites and other businesses. Very about that first street, I guess they like to use planters for their business. And I know that a couple of business owners are getting pretty upset, and they're not ones that I don't want to make mad because it might change the direction of who's getting arrested. Just throwing it out there, maybe we should have a little more control right over the time that they start to 7 o'clock, like you used to do, and it was great, worked really well, but I appreciate you guys starting with 3-7.
Yeah, what, can you just kind of tell me what first street block was it on that first street? Okay.
But I'm not around Boulevard. It was pretty simple on that one. The other thing, I don't know if it was in this meeting or if it was with just you, David, that we brought up talking about the bus stop and why people congregate there, and we end up with basically people that truly ride the bus don't want to be our buses anymore. And a couple of the ideas I came up with were killing the outlet so that they're not always charging things there. And if that takes away that need that they use there. And then making partitions in between the seats so they can't sleep on the bench or lay down or stack everything up. Is there any way we could follow maybe, or who would we talk to look into maybe making that somehow not such a desirable place to congregate? You know,
We can follow up with the transit manager, Brian Albee. I do think the seating at the plaza has those little notches in them. I guess it's like a metal ball that's kind of there to separate the seating, if you will. It's a smaller bench, but you know, we can see if they can either remove the bench so it's kind of standing only, and also ask them about at least removing the power box that is used to charge phones.
but at the same time, and I know I'm kind of repeating what I'm saying here, I know it's nice, especially from a law enforcement perspective, to know where, you know, if everyone's going to be hanging out there all in one spot almost, and it's really nice. Maybe we need to look into finding a way to create somewhere for people to go that isn't square on the boulevard at a bus stop in our plaza. You know, the first thing you see as you pull into town in the square. Maybe that's something our committee should really start thinking about, is not just taking away, finding somewhere to give people that want to sit around.
Yeah, and I would certainly, agree with that, because the plaza is obviously one of the best parts of our downtown area. And to not allow somebody who truly wants to use a charger simply because of the issue we're having to not have that availability. And I would say the same about the bus stop. Those who probably really want to use that seat waiting for a legitimate bus ride. I hate to see us take all of those things from them. I would be way more inclined to say that's probably not a bad thought of what can be done to put them in a spot that's more conducive to what their needs are.
And more acceptable so that we can use what we have as actual purpose.
I have to agree with that. I'm just serving seniors. I know we have a lot of seniors that ride with us, and to make their space smaller, a lot of seniors, they get heavier as they age. They're disabled. You put smaller seating areas, or you take away a bench. I would think you'd have an ADA issue on your hands for one, and certainly a humanitarian thing for those that are using it in the proper way, and for the few that aren't.
So maybe we just have that as a future agenda item to we all think about it and come up with something.
That's a great idea. I really like that product.
I mean, we always talk about taking away. And I get
Make it a comfortable spot.
Let's make something that
make it a nice spot. It's just
and
kind of
we can tell people, look, no more here. We're going to have a different area for you.
And I think that's really the only way we might be able to carefully walk that line when it comes to margins to say, look, you can't hear what you can hear, right? And if we give them that alternative, I think it's.
And I think we can look into no loitering around bus stops, and, you know, unless you're there waiting for the bus, but the bus comes and goes and they're still there, then that's like, you're not waiting for the bus. So you can kind of make it where, you know, we have an alternate location identified.
I would imagine they
And then place after the new location.
They could probably do like a trespass request as well, have that on file.
Yeah.
So that we could use that, but have somewhere else that alternative first.
You know, Tom, in Hillsburg, you know, they had car makers who were trying to get work, and they would hang out in various places around the plaza. So instead, they got a little portable set up not far from the city hall. And that was a place that they could go get out of, you know, the bad weather. They could also have people who knew them, they could go there to try to hire somebody as a day laborer. And it was, I don't know if it, Joe, do you know if they had somebody that oversaw it on a regular basis? I would think you'd need to anyway.
Yeah, I'm not sure how it's getting handled today, but the city actually set that up at the time. Yeah,
Right.
and it worked very very
And
well.
I think continues to.
Yes.
So that might be something we think about, maybe using our nonprofits and other people in our town to create something along with.
Great idea.
And also make it to where, in all honesty, chief would have access to cameras. It might be something that we look into, so that, you know, like a stoplight or anything else, do it's a public area, but you can have your monitor set up. So it's easier for you in the long run.
And you have your public bathroom there.
Absolutely. Which is another thing that's on our city council agenda, but. Anything else?
So I was just gonna mention, sorry, it's because we have the bird hearing in the library, but it has been, multiple people coming over, it's coming. Started to look like a new place, one brings two turned into three, they were up last night, screaming, one guy with a big shopping cart, I don't know, well, but I called before on them and stuff, and they're also using it in the back by the creek, they kind of, the city had it blocked off, and now it's kind of open, but they're using it for bathroom purposes and garbage and stuff, so I'm not sure if it's just in the city, if that's supposed to be cleaned up, because I think this is city property. There's that, and then the other day there was species out front on the sidewalk, and then there's kids that come to the library, it's just it's not a good situation. But particularly last night, up all night screaming, just, so.
And you said you could call us on
We
that.
didn't call last night, but I had called, yeah, but we didn't call last night, we just kind of.
Are they in the creek or are they on this property?
So in Pacific, they're kind of hanging out right here by the door, just kind of sitting on there, but like, mental health, just hearing, talking, having conversations with yourself. But back there, you can walk back there, I had walked back there. Over here, they have, because there was somebody living on this side of the property, and then now they have no trespassing sign. I told my husband we need to put up a couple of signs. But they did kind of change there's a little area back there, and I'm just afraid that it's gonna kind of turn into something, because now it's open a little bit where they have the new football field. So if you could take a little bit extra security and just kind of have some people coming through here, because I don't think you want to shuffle from someplace downtown to over here, because there's kids that come here, it's just not a safe place, and there's no bathrooms, and.
So with the city school subcommittee and the Measure H committee that I'm on, I'll bring up fencing, because out here, right on the edge of the parking spots, I think is the property line. I think the creek and all that is all school property technically. And so I'll talk to them about fencing and fencing on all the creek area.
Because it was either torn down, and I'm not sure if the city tore it down or if people tore it down, but it was kind of all blocked off just a few months ago, but now it's not blocked off anymore, and they have their chain link fence, but it's kind of on the other side of the creek, so something to be aware of.
On that one.
Thank you.
Anything else from anyone here?
Jody has her hand up.
Please go ahead.
Yeah, I was actually just wondering if we're going to see, or if we're considering in response up in North County. I know that Santa Rosa, Petaluma, Monarch Park have been implementing the in response team, and they've had a really good outcome so far of that with that. So I'm just curious if that's anything that we can consider for North County, or if that's something we've looked at. It's complete, wraparound, non-incarceration, that you can call if there's somebody in crisis, and they do send out their team, which includes law enforcement, EMT, fire, the whole, and social work. So it's the whole gamut. And I know we have a lot of that need in our North County. So I was just curious.
Jody, can I ask you a question? On wraparound service from a mental health standpoint? Does the in-response team include the same behavior health, mental health crisis workers that we would call on any other day for one of our major individuals here?
Yes.
So we've done that more times than I can count. Even had a plan in place to call them after hours to, it is not for lack of effort up here, Jody, and I'm not trying to.
No, that's okay.
I have done as much as I possibly can for specifically one individual here that I know is an absolute need. Because the minute they come back here to this community, the behavior is exactly the same.
I am with you on that. I can actually get a little more information with that in response and kind of get a little more detail as far as the wraparound care. Only because they're the call that I sit in on, they have reported really good outcomes. So this was more of a general question, but I will get a little more detail and see if there is a little bit, if there's other additions that we are not able to, tap into in that moment of crisis up here in North County.
What I'd love to do too, Jody, is I can get your email and send you a document that I prepared along with Colleen and Margaret that we kind of created to start working one at a time with these folks. And it's pretty lengthy and it has quite a bit of history on this individual, which might help in finding out how this in-response team can help this person. I hope it's something different than what we've experienced with every other behavioral health interaction. Maybe there's something I don't know. So.
I'd be happy to be a part of that and look at that.
Thank you.
Just a quick paragraph, if I could, Chief, can you tell me about is this a county ran program?
I'm sorry,
is this a county ran program?
What she's talking about?
Yeah.
The in-response, I'm not familiar with in-response.
I think that's Santa Rosa, I think, started.
Okay, I knew that the city of Santa Rosa started. I'm not familiar with the one that would come up there.
And nor am I, to be honest.
Okay, so that's what I guess.
Petaluma started in Petaluma. And
program that the county of Sonoma has put together.
I believe this is city.
Okay, so we don't have that here. Okay, I was just kind of following that. I thought maybe there was a program that serviced this area. But
yeah, no.
Okay. Seeing no other comments, anything for the future agenda? Colleen, Jody?
no, I would just like to suggest maybe we do a little ad hoc meeting to look at possible sites that we talked about for, how we can maybe accommodate a nice setting with restroom facilities and stuff that might be an appropriate place for a person who's homeless and just hanging out, has a nice comfortable place to do that, working with the city and with the chief, and just maybe take a couple hours and check some sites out. So when we come to our next meeting, we may have some ideas. Yeah, just a thought.
I'm looking forward to going to the Cherry Creek open house.
Yes, I am too.
Yeah, thanks.
Colleen, go ahead.
So I'm wondering, would it be possible for us to invite someone from behavioral health to sit on this group? And if someone doesn't represent Cloverdale, then I guess what I'm saying is I think we should know that. And so that they could answer these questions about IMDT and Measure O money and any of the funding resources that might be coming down the pipe that would be available to us.
Oh, and we previously used to invite the county. I'm pretty sure they're still on the distribution list. I probably need to circle back with the staff of the Community Development Commission and reiterate our interest in having them participate and be part of our discussions here. Certainly, they offer a lot of technical information about programs, funding, current activities. So I can certainly reach out, and if you have a particular contact that you work with that you know would be willing to participate, you'll let me know, and we can make sure they're on the agenda, distribution list, and try to get them scheduled in to attend our meetings.
Yeah, I'm thinking Steven Sotomayor. I met with him last week. Jessica and I met with him, and we were talking about expanding some of the case management resources at Cherry Creek. And he indicated that he was advocating for, I think, something along the IMDT lines where they were more formally plugged in, where they were committed to a certain number of days at certain agencies. So I'm thinking, since he's on the community continuum of care board, maybe he would be someone that would be interested in being more involved in this group. He could be our advocate in that way, because he then bridges the gap between Cloverdale and the continuum. I don't know, just an idea.
We can certainly ask him. I know he is our council recommended appointment to the Continuum of Care Board, and we do invite him for updates on Continuum of Care, just kind of status check-ins. But we can see if he can participate more routinely. I know he's as a city staffer for Hillsburg, he's pretty busy on homelessness, but we'll see if we can get him plugged in more often.
Yeah, I think he indicated he really wanted to get more involved in Cloverdale. So we might want to just take advantage of that, his current willingness.
So just for maybe the next meeting, it would be helpful. I'd like to suggest maybe we invite Supervisor Gore to the meeting and give them some updates, what we're doing, some of the concerns, and how the county and us may work closer. And the community response team is one of the things that we could really use help with, and up at the North County, because a lot of the homeless, though we come up with 30 homeless, but not all of them are from Cloverdale. They live outside the county. So I think it would be helpful if we get him or somebody from this office here, so we could kind of articulate what we're doing, what we're trying, some of the issues, and how we may collaborate with them to get some support and better service up at the North County. So I'd like to see that on the agenda for just a conversation with us all, kind of laying out, here's what we're doing, here's some of the issues, but here's some of the problems, here's some of the issues that we need help with, and try to get that dialogue moving and get him.
I think Jenny used to participate too.
And I think it's still on the email.
Yeah, it'd be nice if they're here and they're partnering. And I mean, I don't see, I'm not familiar with what services they're bringing to the table, but that may be something we want to ask or ask for the services we need. So that would be great.
We used to, about what, a year ago?
Yeah, we have a little bit of a lull in our meetings. It's we kind of revamped it to everything. They were actually listening.
Anyone else? Next meeting, give me 1 second. April 12th, I believe, what it will end up. Wasn't written on the bottom of my agenda, it's April 12th, and I'll do a later meeting, which is 5 o'clock. And so thank you all for participating, and if you have any future agenda items, please send them to myself or David Kelly. Meeting's adjourned at 2:48.
Thank you, everybody.
Hey, Joe. Yeah, are you getting community what's calling you about the because I asked Chris since the last meeting, this was addressed.